The future was hers to shape, and she was ready. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. The small diner on the edge of the quiet town buzzed with the low hum of conversation, clinking cutlery, and the faint hiss of a coffee machine. Sarah, a waitress in her late 20s, moved swiftly between tables, balancing plates and cups with a practiced ease. But today wasn't like every other day. Her hands trembled slightly, and her usually bright eyes were rimmed with redness. She plastered a smile on her face for every customer, but the weight of her reality pressed harder with each passing moment. In a corner booth, a man sat alone, scribbling notes on a napkin. He wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans, blending seamlessly with the regular crowd. But his presence carried an aura that seemed out of place. It was Elon Musk, seeking a quiet moment away from the relentless pace of his high-tech empire. He sipped his coffee, his gaze occasionally wandering to the window where rain gently streaked the glass. Sarah approached his table hesitantly, the tray in her hand wobbling slightly. "Refill for your coffee?" she asked, her voice betraying her weariness. Elon looked up, his sharp eyes catching the faint quiver in her tone. "Sure," he replied, his voice calm yet curious. As she poured the steaming coffee, a single tear slipped down her cheek. She quickly turned away, hoping he wouldn't notice, but it was too late. "You okay?" Elon's voice stopped her in her tracks. It wasn't intrusive, just sincere. For a moment, Sarah didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to strangers asking her that, much less someone like him, though she didn't yet realize who he was. "I'm fine," she said quickly, forcing another smile. "Just a long day." But Elon didn't look away. "Sometimes it's more than just the day, isn't it?" he said softly, almost to himself. Sarah froze, the weight of his words striking a chord deep within her. She nodded slightly but didn't say anything. What could she possibly share with a stranger who looked like he belonged to a completely different world? As she walked away, Elon pulled out a notepad from his bag, his mind already churning. He scribbled something quickly, folded the note, and slipped it beneath his empty coffee cup. He paid his bill, left a generous tip, and exited the diner quietly. Sarah noticed the folded piece of paper only after she had cleared his table. At first, she thought it was just another receipt or scribble from a distracted customer, but as she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. The words were simple but shook her to the core. Sometimes the ones holding everything together are the ones who need the most help. "Call this number. Let's talk." Beneath the message was Elon's signature. For a moment, Sarah couldn't move. She looked out the window, but he was already gone, lost in the rain-soaked streets. She had no idea what this note truly meant, or how it was about to change everything. For the rest of her shift, Sarah couldn't shake off the weight of the note in her pocket. She had no plans to call the number. Why would she? It was probably just some kind of gimmick. Yet, deep down, something about the man's eyes, the way they seemed to see right through her, kept tugging at her thoughts. By the time the diner closed, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the dim glow of the streetlights. Sarah locked up, stuffed the crumpled note into her jacket, and began the long walk home. The town was silent, save for the occasional car passing by. Her apartment was small and cold, the heating barely working, and the fridge filled with little more than milk and leftover soup. She dropped her bag on the counter and sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the note. Her phone was in her hand before she even realized it. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the voice in her head reminding her she had nothing left to lose. Slowly, she dialed the number. The line rang once, twice, and then a calm, familiar voice answered, "This is Elon." For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat tightened as the reality of what she was doing hit her. Hi. I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm the waitress from earlier," she said awkwardly, unsure how to start. "I remember," he said, his tone steady. "I'm glad you called." Sarah exhaled deeply, her chest tightening with both relief and confusion. "Why would you give me your number? I mean, you don't even know me." There was a pause on the other end before Elon replied. "You're right. I don't know you, but I know the look in your eyes. It's the same one I had when I was sleeping on my office floor, trying to figure out how to save my companies from collapsing. That kind of exhaustion doesn't come from a long day. It comes from carrying too much for too long." His words struck a nerve. Sarah felt her eyes welling up again, but she quickly wiped them. "It's just life," she muttered. "Everyone's struggling, right?" "Maybe," Elon said thoughtfully, "but not everyone admits it, and even fewer people do something about it." For a brief moment there was silence. Sarah hesitated, unsure if she should share more, but something about the way he spoke made her feel safe. "I lost my mom 6 months ago," she finally said. "She was all I had. Since then, it's just been surviving." Elon didn't respond right away, but Sarah could hear the weight of his breath on the other end. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice softer now. "That kind of pain doesn't go away, but you don't have to face it alone." The sincerity in his words caught her off guard. "Why do you care?" she asked, almost angrily. You have everything." "Because I've been where you are," he replied, "and I had people who helped me, people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Now it's my turn to pay it forward." Sarah didn't know what to say. She stared at the chipped paint on her wall, her mind racing. "What are you saying?" she asked cautiously. "I'm saying," Elon continued, "that sometimes a single step in the right direction can change everything. I have an idea, but I need to know if you're ready for something bigger than just surviving." Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process his words. "What kind of idea?" "You'll find out," he said cryptically. "But first, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" And just like that, Sarah found herself at a crossroads she never expected. The question wasn't if she could trust him. It was whether she could trust herself to take a leap into the unknown. The next morning, Sarah woke up restless, the memory of the phone call playing over and over in her mind. She didn't know what Elon meant by something bigger, but the idea of stepping into a world so far removed from her own was terrifying. Still, curiosity gnawed at her. She went through her day as usual, serving coffee, taking orders, and forcing smiles. But every time the diner door opened, she found herself glancing up, half expecting him to walk in again. By the time her shift ended, she had convinced herself that whatever Elon had in mind was just a passing thought for him, something he'd forget about as soon as his next meeting started. But as she stepped outside, there he was, leaning casually against a sleek electric car parked near the diner. Elon's presence was impossible to ignore. Sarah froze, clutching her bag tightly as he straightened up and walked toward her. "You actually came back?" she said, half in disbelief. "I don't make empty promises," Elon replied with a faint smile. "You're off work, right? Good, we have somewhere to be." "Wait, what?" Sarah stammered, her heart racing. "I didn't agree to anything." "You're here, aren't you?" Elon interrupted gently, his tone calm but firm. "That's enough for now. Trust me." Against every instinct, Sarah found herself nodding. Before she could overthink it, he opened the passenger door, gesturing for her to get in. The car's interior smelled new, and the dashboard glowed with futuristic displays. It felt surreal, like stepping into another universe. "Where are we going?" she asked, as the car silently glided onto the road. "You'll see," Elon said, keeping his eyes on the road. "For now, just breathe. You've been holding it in for too long." His words, simple yet piercing, left her silent. The town's familiar streets gave way to the open highway, and soon they were surrounded by sprawling landscapes. Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and intrigue. She had no idea where they were headed, but the thought of leaving her small, stifling world, even briefly, felt strangely liberating. After about an hour, they pulled into an industrial complex that seemed to stretch endlessly. Massive buildings, some still under construction, loomed ahead. The Tesla logo was emblazoned on one of them, while another bore the name SpaceX. Sarah stared out the window, her mind struggling to process the sheer scale of it all. "Why are we here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon parked the car and turned to her, his expression serious now. "Because I want to show you something. Something that might change how you see the world. And yourself." He led her into one of the buildings where engineers and scientists bustled around, their conversations a mix of technical jargon and focused urgency. The energy was electric, almost overwhelming. Elon walked with purpose, and Sarah struggled to keep up, her mind racing with questions. Finally, they stopped in front of a massive viewing window that overlooked a sleek, partially assembled rocket. Elon turned to Sarah, his eyes sharp and thoughtful. "Do you know what this is?" "It's a rocket?" she guessed, feeling out of place. "It's more than that," Elon said. "This is hope. This is proof that no matter how impossible something seems, it can be done. But only if people are willing to take risks, to trust each other, and to believe in something bigger than themselves." Sarah frowned, unsure what to say. "What does this have to do with me?" Elon studied her for a moment before answering. "Because I see something in you, Sarah. Something you don't even see in yourself yet. You think you're just surviving, but you're stronger than you know. And sometimes, all it takes is one opportunity to realize that." Her chest tightened as his words sank in. She didn't know whether to feel inspired or overwhelmed. "I don't belong here," she said finally. "I'm just me." Elon smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you do." Before she could respond, an assistant approached Elon, handing him a tablet with urgent updates. He glanced at it briefly before turning back to Sarah. "This is just the beginning. You've got a choice now. Walk away and keep surviving, or take a step forward and see where this leads. Either way, it's your call." Sarah looked out at the rocket, her heart pounding. For the first time in months, she felt something stir inside her, a spark of possibility. Sarah stood frozen, staring at the rocket through the viewing window. The weight of Elon's words pressed heavily on her. For so long, her life had been about getting through one day at a time. Now, she was being asked to believe in something, herself, when she barely remembered what hope felt like. "I don't even know what you're offering," she said finally, her voice trembling. Elon folded his arms, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not offering you a handout. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger. But you'll have to work for it." "Work for what?" she asked, confused and defensive. "I don't have a degree. I'm not some genius engineer or tech wizard. I serve coffee and clean tables." Elon smirked slightly, shaking his head. "You think the people who built this place started as experts. Most of them started just like you. They didn't know they could change the world until they tried." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to believe him, but the doubts screamed louder in her mind. "Why me?" she asked softly. "There are thousands of people more qualified, more deserving. Why pick me?" Alon's expression softened. "Because you remind me of someone I used to know," he said. "Someone who thought they were too small to matter until they decided to take a leap. You're here because you already took the first step, calling me, showing up. That's more than most people ever do." Before Sarah could respond, he gestured for her to follow him. They walked down a hallway and into a room that buzzed with activity. On one side, a group of people were clustered around a 3D printer, fabricating intricate parts. On the other, screens displayed complex simulations of rocket trajectories. The air was charged with excitement and focus. Elon pointed to a young man nervously presenting a prototype to a small group of colleagues. "That's Jason. He was stocking shelves at a hardware store 2 years ago before he joined our apprenticeship program. Now he's designing components for our next mission." He turned toward a woman sitting at a workstation, coding furiously. "And that's Maria, single mom of 3, working as a receptionist before she took a chance on herself. Now she's helping us optimize our AI systems." Sarah's eyes darted between them, her mind reeling. "You're saying I could do something like that?" she asked hesitantly. "I'm saying you already have what it takes," Elon replied. "The question is whether you're willing to bet on yourself." As they walked deeper into the facility, they reached a quieter area where a prototype electric vehicle sat surrounded by tools and blueprints. Elon stopped and turned to her. "We're working on a new initiative, one that isn't just about rockets or cars. It's about creating opportunities for people who've been overlooked. People like you." He picked up a wrench and gestured toward the vehicle. "This isn't just a project, it's a test, a team effort. We're putting together a group of people from all walks of life to tackle real-world challenges. If you're in, you'll be part of that team." Sarah stared at him, her pulse racing. She wanted to believe him, to trust the possibility he was offering, but fear clawed at her. What if she failed? What if she wasn't enough? Elon seemed to sense her hesitation. "I can't promise it'll be easy," he said. "In fact, it'll probably be the hardest thing you've ever done. But I can promise this. If you take this step, you'll never look at yourself the same way again." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of machinery. Sarah looked at the vehicle, then back at Elon. She thought of her mother, who had always believed she could do more, even when Sarah couldn't see it. She thought of the long nights spent wondering if her life would ever amount to anything more than survival. Finally, she took a deep breath and met Elon's gaze. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady for the first time in a long while. Elon smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Good, let's get started." The next few weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Sarah's life, once predictable and monotonous, had shifted in ways she never could have imagined. Elon's team put her through a series of tests, physical, mental, and emotional. At first, she felt overwhelmed, like she was drowning in a sea of unfamiliar concepts, high-tech equipment, and jargon she could barely understand. But Elon never let her sink. He pushed her, challenged her, and most importantly, he believed in her when she barely believed in herself. Every day, she found herself waking up with a new sense of purpose, though the pressure weighed heavily on her. The tasks were difficult, but they were never impossible. She learned how to use advanced software to simulate engineering models, how to handle precision tools, and how to think critically when faced with challenges. She spent long hours in the lab, often side by side with Maria and Jason, 2 people who had once been like her, unsure of their place in the world. One afternoon, as Sarah and Maria were working late on a prototype for a new energy-efficient battery, Elon stopped by. He was deep in conversation with a few engineers, but when he saw Sarah, his eyes brightened. "How's it going?" he asked casually, though there was an intensity in his voice. Sarah wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead and glanced at Maria, who gave her a nod of encouragement. "It's coming together," Sarah said, though she could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. "But we still need to fine-tune the design. There's an issue with the battery cells." Elon approached the workbench, his eyes scanning the blueprint. "What's the problem?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, then pointed at the diagram. "The cells aren't integrating with the new chipset we're using. The energy flow is inconsistent." Elon raised an eyebrow, then smiled. "I like that you're thinking in terms of integration, not just individual parts. That's what sets good engineers apart from the rest. But it's not just about fixing problems. It's about seeing the potential in what you're building." For a moment, Sarah didn't know how to respond. She had always seen herself as someone who fixed things, never someone who built them from the ground up. But as Elon's words sank in, something clicked. "Okay," she said, a sense of clarity washing over her. "What if we adjusted the chip's power tolerance? We can push the current limit just enough to make the cells work without compromising the integrity." Elon's eyes gleamed with approval. "That's the kind of thinking I like to see. Go ahead and try it." Over the next few days, Sarah worked tirelessly, experimenting with different configurations. Each setback only fueled her determination, and slowly but surely the pieces began to come together. The battery was functioning as it should, the prototype running smoother than before. One evening, as they gathered to test the final model, Sarah felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. This was it. This was her moment. Elon stood at the back of the room, watching as the team members connected the battery to the vehicle prototype. "All right," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Let's see if it works." They flicked the switch, and for a moment, nothing happened. Sarah held her breath, waiting. Then the vehicle's lights flickered on and the engine hummed to life, slowly at first, but then with more confidence. The room erupted in cheers. Sarah couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had helped build something real. Elon approached her, a rare look of pride on his face. "You did it," he said, offering her a handshake. "This is just the beginning. You've proven to yourself that you're capable of more than you ever imagined." Sarah smiled, but inside, her emotions were a whirlwind. This was everything she had ever wanted, but it also felt like something had changed deep within her. She wasn't just the waitress anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was living. The success of the prototype sparked something bigger. Media outlets caught wind of the breakthrough, and soon Sarah found herself facing questions from reporters, her face plastered across the news. It was surreal, to say the least. But amid the chaos, one thing was clear. Elon Musk had been right. Her life wasn't just about surviving. It was about taking a chance, stepping out of her comfort zone, and finding out what she was truly capable of. As the days passed, Sarah's role in the company continued to grow. The small-town Waitress was now a part of something global, a movement that had the potential to change the world. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that she was ready for whatever came next. The leap of faith she took was more than just a career change. It was a transformation. And as she stood in that lab, looking out at the future she was helping to build, she finally understood what Elon had meant. She wasn't just part of a team, she was part of a revolution. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah's transformation was undeniable. What started as a chance encounter with Elon Musk had turned her life upside down, in the best way possible. She was no longer just a waitress from a small town. She was now a key player in one of the world's most innovative companies. But with every success, the pressure mounted. Every project, every decision felt heavier. and Sarah found herself questioning if she was truly cut out for this new world she had stepped into. It was late one evening when Elon approached her in the lab. The team had just wrapped up another successful test, but Sarah's mind was elsewhere. She was exhausted, mentally and physically, and the weight of her responsibilities was starting to wear on her. "You look like you need a break," Elon said, leaning against the doorframe. His tone wasn't harsh, but there was an underlying concern. "I'm fine," Sarah replied, though the words felt hollow. She had never been one to admit vulnerability, and the pressure to constantly perform was becoming overwhelming. "Just a little tired, I guess." Elon studied her for a moment, then pushed off the doorframe. "You know, when I started out, I had moments just like this. The kind where you question everything and wonder if you're really good enough. But let me tell you something. It's not about being perfect. It's about pushing through those doubts and continuing to move forward, even when you can't see the next step." Sarah looked up at him, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. She had heard similar words before, but they didn't make the burden feel any lighter. "I'm not sure I can keep going at this pace," she confessed, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "It feels like I'm always one step away from failing." Elon walked over and sat beside her, his presence oddly calming. "You're not failing, Sarah. You're growing. And growth isn't comfortable. It's messy. It's full of uncertainty and mistakes. But those mistakes are just stepping stones to something greater. Look at everything you've accomplished already. You went from serving coffee to creating something that could change the world." "I know, but—" Sarah trailed off, feeling a lump form in her throat. She had always been a fighter, but the relentless pressure was starting to chip away at her confidence. "What if I'm just not cut out for this? What if I can't handle it?" Elon's expression softened. "You're already handling it. You're just too close to see it. Trust me. Every single person here has had those doubts. I did, but I kept going. And you will too, because you have something special. You've got the drive, the intelligence, and the heart. Don't let your fears tell you otherwise." There was a long pause as Sarah let his words sink in. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe them. She wasn't just a survivor anymore, she was a creator. She was a part of something bigger than herself, and she had earned her place here. "You're right," Sarah finally said, her voice steadier than before. "I've come this far, and I'm not about to give up now." Elon stood up, offering her a hand. "Good, because I'm not letting you off the hook. We're in this together." Sarah took his hand, feeling a surge of renewed strength. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of her responsibilities lift just a little. She wasn't alone in this. She had a team, a mentor, and most importantly, she had herself. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah continued to thrive. She became a leader in her own right, guiding new team members and taking on more complex projects. The once overwhelming challenges now felt like opportunities. She still faced moments of doubt, but each time she did, she remembered Elon's words. "It's not about being perfect, it's about pushing through." And so, she did. Her journey had started with a simple moment of vulnerability, a cry in a diner, and had led her to a place she never could have imagined. But it was more than just a career change. It was a transformation. And Sarah knew as she walked through the halls of SpaceX that she had truly found her place in the world. The note Elon had left her all those months ago had been more than just words on paper. It had been the spark that ignited something inside her, a belief that she was capable of greatness. And now, as she looked out at the horizon, she knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The future was hers to shape. And she was ready.